So tell us about your survey, who you spoke to, some of the results, and what it means.
Yeah, this was with the Association of National Advertisers, so this is their member base. Obviously very high users of television, a lot of them. And what I was really trying to get at is, or the question I was really trying to answer is, will the future of television ever arrive? I mean, how many years have we talked about interactive and addressable and all these other things? And how many now decades has television resisted this advance of technology and really not changed very much? So we asked the A&M members about how knowledgeable they were about both of these new styles of planning and buying TV. And what we heard was actually very similar. In both groups, there's 15 to 17% who said we're already regularly planning and buying using these techniques. Then there's another 20 to 30% who say we're experimenting, but we're still learning, we're not ready to incorporate it into our regular plans yet. And then another 20, 30% who are like, well, we don't really know enough to use it yet. But what is kind of interesting about those numbers is, everybody uses the terms, innovators, or early adopters, mainstreamers. Those come from a model of the adoption of innovations by a guy named Everett Rogers. And the Everett Rogers model says the first 15% of a market is the early adopters, the next 30% is the early mainstream, and when you get those early adopters really using it and you start to get the early mainstream entering the market, you're at the inflection point, the proverbial hockey stick, where the adoption accelerates rapidly. So these numbers to me really indicate that we are at that inflection point, and after all these years of talk and headlines and all the conferences about it, it's actually going to start happening.
And videotapes about it.
All of us talking heads saying, yep, it's going to happen.
So give us a little bit of a roadmap next year for the upfront, or let's talk 12, 18 months. How will the industry change if we are at an inflection point, as you found?
We're not going to abandon the upfronts anytime soon. I think the upfronts will continue to play a key role because the prime time inventory is still much less supply than there is demand. So when you've got that kind of imbalance, the sellers are in the catbird seat. They're going to maintain that control, and they like the upfronts. And it serves the industry in a number of ways. Where I think it begins to change is that when you negotiate a package in the upfronts, you don't just get the primetime shows that you want. You have to buy other programs and day parts and networks within the family. And so there's a package that gets put together. What we saw last year, NBCU sold $1 billion worth of their inventory on these advanced TV targets, i.e. targets that went beyond age and gender kind of definitions. So that's where I think this negotiation comes in, beyond the prime time. Okay, for all these other buys that I need to incorporate into my schedule, rather than just buying an 18 to 49, 25 to 54 audience, let's find those in-market car buyers, or those parents with toddlers in diapers, or whatever it is, and let's negotiate that part of the schedule around those audiences.
Cool, and Jim, finally, this is a big question about all these vendors here at this conference, the people you cover, the people that I cover. Looking at this sort of inflection point, what's exciting in terms of industry sectors maybe, or the vendor sector that could sort of benefit through this transition?
Yeah. I'm really excited by some of the companies that are building the tools for the buyers to build their schedules, again, using these data sets. Up to this point, it's been the Viacom Vantage, the Turner Data Cloud, the NBCU target audience platform. So the programmers, the media sellers have built these things, but no buyer wants to be dependent on the data that the seller is telling them, here's who our audience is. So, but there are these tools. LiveRamp is certainly making a big contribution to the development of this area, that the buyers can now get their hands on and say, let me look at maybe some slightly different definitions of my audience, and let me do my planning myself, and then go to the sellers and negotiate from that basis.
What do you make of the ACR segment and and data coming out of TVs and all that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about that.
Yeah, and it's a very promising area of data. One of the things that I urge marketers who are starting to move into this space, that they need to become data detectives. All of those platforms promise a lot, but you have to be a little, you can't take it at face value. You've got to ask, who are these users, that you're getting this data from? How representative are they of the viewing audience as a whole? What kinds of weighting and balancing are you doing to project to that total viewing audience? Sort of classic market research, nuts and bolts methodology stuff to make sure that the data that you're getting is really as high quality, as solid as the traditional data sets, like Nielsen, MRI, and Simmons that we've always relied on, that we all know have very strong methodological discipline and rigor in how they collect their data.